At 2:23 a.m. over the Gulf of Oman, an E-2D advanced Hawkeye flying at 25,000 feet detected 52 incoming tracks lifting off almost at once from Iran's coastline. Not one, not five, but 52 separate ballistic and anti-ship missile signatures appeared in the boost phase, before their engines had even finished burning. The Hawkeye's APY-9 active electronically scanned array radar had already marked every launch before the crews on the ground had time to get back into their vehicles. The operators had 8 minutes before the first possible impacts, and they used 6 of those minutes to intercept every target. The USS Abraham Lincoln, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, weighs in at around 100,000 tons, carries close to 90 aircraft, and has remained the centerpiece of Carrier Strike Group 3 since entering the 5th Fleet's area of responsibility in late January 2026. Its arrival came during an extremely tense moment. Iran had already taken major damage to its missile infrastructure during Israel's strikes in June 2025. Production sites were heavily damaged, and the number of available launchers had dropped sharply. A country that once claimed a stockpile of 3,000 ballistic missiles was now operating with far fewer resources and leadership under growing pressure. So when those 52 missiles were launched, the decision looked less like confidence and more like desperation. Over the next 48 hours, much of the global media focused on Iranian state reports describing the strike as a success. What those broadcasts did not mention was the Lincoln's navigation log, which recorded no course changes and no speed adjustments during the entire engagement window. That detail alone tells a very different story. The mix of weapons launched reveals a lot about Iran's post-war strategy. The first wave included 28 Khalij-Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles. The name translates to Persian Gulf, and this missile is the IRGC's dedicated naval strike ballistic weapon. It is a version of the solid-fueled Fateh 110, equipped with an electro-optical and infrared seeker intended to lock onto a warship's heat signature during the terminal phase. With a range of about 300 kilometers, a 650-kilogram warhead, and an impact speed around Mach 3, it was built for exactly this kind of mission: overwhelm U.S. carrier defenses with enough incoming fire that at least some warheads make it through. Behind the Khalij-Fars missiles came 16 Imad medium-range ballistic missiles. These liquid-fueled systems, derived from the Shahab-3, were meant to flood radar tracking systems with sheer volume while approaching from multiple directions. The final 8 were Hormuz-2 anti-radiation missiles, designed to home in on the electromagnetic emissions from shipboard radar systems. The concept was straightforward: blind the sensors, then let the rest of the strike package pass through. On paper, it was a smart plan. In practice, it failed completely. At 2:23 a.m., the Hawkeye's APY-9 radar had already detected every launch before the mobile crews could even hide their launchers again. The E-2D Advanced Hawkeye is often called the Navy's eyes, but that description barely captures what it really does. The APY-9 combines mechanical rotation with electronic beam steering, allowing it to run 2 scanning modes at once and track different kinds of threats simultaneously. It can detect targets at ranges beyond 550 kilometers. It can spot ballistic missiles climbing through boost phase, cruise missiles flying low over the water, and virtually everything in between. Then it classifies those targets and shares the full tactical picture through Link 16 to ships, aircraft, and submarines across the strike group within seconds. That morning, the Hawkeye crew sorted all 52 tracks in less than 40 seconds and sent firing assignments before the missiles had even climbed past 20,000 feet. Iran was hoping to catch the Lincoln off guard. Instead, it gave a fully alert combat network 8 full minutes to respond. What followed was not just a defensive action, it was a perfectly timed demonstration of how modern naval air defense works when every link in the chain is already in place. It wasn't simply a defensive response, it was a firing solution already waiting to happen. The USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group operates under a concept known as NIFCCA, Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air. The principle behind it sounds simple, but its impact is enormous. Every sensor within the strike group contributes to a shared operational picture, and every weapon platform can engage targets detected by any of those sensors, not just its own. As soon as the E-2D Hawkeye detected the launches, its radar data flowed directly into the Aegis combat systems aboard 3 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers: USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., USS Spruance, and USS Michael Murphy. Each of these ships operates the powerful AN/SPY 1D phased array radar, capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, with coverage approaching a full 360 degrees. Within moments, those systems cross-referenced the Hawkeye's data and began calculating intercept solutions before the officers in the combat information centers had even finished their coffee. Automated assignment algorithms divided the 52 incoming tracks among the 3 destroyers. Every target had a designated interceptor. No overlaps, no gaps. Inside the ships, the Mark 41 vertical launch system cells began running through a rapid series of calculations: intercept altitude, engagement distance, appropriate interceptor type, and reload priorities. From the moment of first detection, it took just 22 seconds before the first interceptor launched. The weapon leaving the tube was the SM-3 Block 2A, one of the most advanced ballistic missile interceptors ever deployed at sea. Developed jointly by the United States and Japan over more than 2 decades, the missile weighs roughly 1,500 kilograms and can reach altitudes exceeding 500 kilometers, well above the atmosphere. Instead of carrying an explosive warhead, the SM-3 uses a kinetic kill vehicle. The interceptor collides directly with its target at a combined speed of around 15 kilometers per second. The concept is simple in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. Striking a hypersonic object with another hypersonic object in space, in darkness, with a target roughly the size of a filing cabinet. Each Block 2A interceptor used in the 2026 engagement carried a price tag of about $27.9 million. That sounds expensive until compared to the weapons it was designed to stop. A single Geopolitical missile costs Iran an estimated $1.5 to $2 million, and a MAD ballistic missile falls somewhere around $3 to $4 million. From a purely mathematical standpoint, the defensive system was always positioned to win the exchange. US planners understood this clearly. Iranian planners appeared to hope that sheer volume might overwhelm the numbers. It didn't. The high-altitude interception layer collapsed within the first 4 minutes of the engagement. The destroyers launched 24 SM-3 Block 2A interceptors in carefully coordinated salvos through the NIFCCA network. Each interceptor was assigned a unique target, ensuring no duplication of effort. In the thin darkness above the Gulf, the kill vehicles met their targets in space. 16 EMAD medium-range ballistic missiles were eliminated before they even reached the peak of their flight paths. The impacts produced scattered debris fields across more than 200 kilometers of sky. Most of the fragments burned up as they fell back through the atmosphere. None came anywhere near the Abraham Lincoln. The Geopolitical missiles presented a different challenge. Unlike the EMAD missiles, these weapons descended in a steep and fast terminal phase, approaching at around Mach 3. Their electro-optical seekers activated during the final moments of flight, scanning the ocean for the heat signature of a large warship. This was where the next defensive layer took over. 18 of the incoming missiles were intercepted using the SM-6. Designed as a highly versatile weapon, the SM-6 can engage aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic threats during their terminal phase inside the atmosphere. With engagement ranges approaching 370 kilometers, it uses inertial guidance for most of its flight, before switching to active radar homing during the final seconds. Each SM-6 costs around $4 million. The 18 Geopolitical missiles destroyed by those interceptors had cost Iran roughly $27 to $36 million to produce. Even after that wave of interceptions, 10 missiles were still inbound, including 8 Hormuz-2 anti-radiation weapons designed to home in on radar emissions from the ships. And this is the moment when another player entered the battle. High above the strike group, the EA-18G Growler moved into position. The EA-18G Growler is built on the Super Hornet platform, but in this role, it becomes something far more specialized: an airborne electronic warfare system. 2 Growlers from VAQ-133, the Wizards, were already in the air on a routine mission when the engagement started. Equipped with ALQ-99 and next-generation ALQ-249 jamming pods, they had the ability to detect, identify, and actively interfere with enemy radar seekers across several frequency bands at the same time. The moment the Hormuz-2 missiles switched on their radar homing seekers and began searching for Spy 1D emissions, the Growlers gave them a false picture. Instead of finding real targets, the missiles were fed deceptive signals, phantom radar sources that seemed to be coming from empty stretches of ocean far from the Lincoln. 6 of the 8 Hormuz-2 missiles followed those fake signals and dropped harmlessly into the water. The other 2 managed to keep their lock, but they were intercepted by ESSMs, the Evolved Sea Sparrow missile. Each interceptor cost about $1.4 million, and each one did exactly what it was supposed to do. At 2:31 a.m., just 8 minutes and 4 seconds after the first detection, the final track disappeared from the E-2D screen. The last 4 Kalashnikov missiles that made it through the earlier engagement phases came in steep and fast at the outer edge of the defensive perimeter. USS Frank E. Patterson Jr. dealt with 3 of them using SM-2 Block 4 Extended Range Interceptors, an older but highly reliable system designed to engage threats within the atmosphere at distances of up to 370 kilometers. The 4th got close enough that the Lincoln's own Phalanx close-in weapon system rotated into action. Phalanx fires 4,500 rounds of 20mm tungsten per minute through a 6-barrel Vulcan cannon, all guided by autonomous targeting software once the operator has designated the threat. From there, the system takes over. That final Kali-Fars never made it to the ship. It broke apart about 2,200 meters from the Lincoln's flight deck. Total damage to the strike group: 0 ships, 0 aircraft, 0 personnel, and not a single course change. 4 hours later, the Lincoln's air wing resumed scheduled flight operations as planned. On paper, the cost breakdown seems dramatic. Iran launched 28 Kalashnikov anti-ship ballistic missiles at roughly $1.5 to $2 million each, for an estimated total of $42 to $56 million. It also used 16 EMAD medium-range ballistic missiles at around $3 to $4 million each, adding another $48 to $64 million. Then came 8 Hormuz-2 anti-radiation missiles at about $1 million apiece, bringing the total Iranian expenditure to somewhere between $98 and $128 million. And that figure does not even include the price of exposing launchers, losing operational secrecy, and spending strategic surprise on an attack that should have been modeled more carefully. The US side spent much more in pure dollar terms: 24 SM-3. Block 2A interceptors at $27.9 million each came to about $669.6 million. 18 SM-6 interceptors added roughly $72 million. 2 ESSMs added another $2.8 million, and 3 SM-2 Block 4 interceptors contributed about $6.3 million more. Phalanx ammunition was negligible by comparison. Altogether, the American side spent around $750.7 million. At first glance, the numbers make it look like Iran came out ahead. But that conclusion misses the real outcome: that $750 million bought something Iran could not erase, counter, or easily recover from: proof. Proof that a 52-missile saturation strike, one of the largest ever attempted against a U.S. naval target, achieved 0 hits, 0 operational impact, and 0 strategic leverage. Iran used a meaningful portion of its post-war missile inventory only to highlight just how resilient the American defense network had become. Israeli officials had estimated that Iran still possessed around 1,500 missiles after the strikes in June 2025. The February 2026 salvo used up 52 of them. Rebuilding that stockpile is not a fast process. Production facilities remain damaged, launcher programs are under close watch, and every missile fired is one less asset available for the future. The deeper calculation is psychological, not financial. For 2 decades, Iran's doctrine of active deterrence was built around the idea that its missile force could one day pose a credible threat to a U.S. carrier strike group. That theory was just tested at full scale. The result was a complete interception rate against a 52-missile mixed salvo that combined ballistic and quasi-ballistic threats. What was meant to project strength ended up revealing the opposite. The anti-radar seekers and multi-angle attack paths were supposed to overload a layered defense system. Instead, they exposed exactly how far that defense network has advanced. Iran revealed seeker bands, launch patterns, and salvo sequencing. The Americans revealed almost nothing except one thing that mattered: they were fully prepared. And the real story goes beyond cost. The real value was in the data. Every ballistic path was tracked. Every seeker frequency was captured. Every launch location was triangulated through satellite coverage and E-2D surveillance. By the time the strike group returned to standard operations, it had collected a full electronic intelligence package on Iran's post-war missile tactics, updated seeker characteristics, and the likely number of launchers still in service. Iran believed it was sending a warning. In reality, it handed over a technical case study. This is what asymmetric deterrence looks like in 2026. Not dramatic fleet-to-fleet exchanges on the horizon, and not apocalyptic imagery. It looks like a fully integrated kill chain that detects every threat at maximum distance, sorts 52 tracks in 40 seconds, and launches coordinated intercepts from 3 destroyers using targeting data from an aircraft overhead. The opposing side cannot break the network, while the carrier at the center of the attack never changes course by even a single degree. Iran launched 52 missiles at the Abraham Lincoln. The Abraham Lincoln continued flight operations, when the most ambitious strike in a generation delivers the strategic effect of little more than a formal gesture. It raises a bigger question about what the missiles were really meant to achieve. The answer was never purely destruction. It was defiance. And the response it received was calm, controlled indifference. In the logic of modern naval deterrence, those two ideas together explain more than any headline ever could about who held the advantage in the Gulf of Oman at 2:23 in the morning. If this breakdown gave you something useful, subscribe to the channel and share the video. The engagements that stay out of the headlines are often the ones that shape everything that follows.